6 years ago, Red Bull and Max Verstappen were untouchable. 4 consecutive world titles. A car so dominant that rivals were literally writing letters to the FIA, begging for intervention. A dynasty that looked like it had no expiration date. Today, Verstappen called the RB22 undriveable at Suzuka. He failed to make Q3 for the first time since 2015. F1 oversteer. And after the race, he openly said he needs to figure out his future in Formula One. Here's the thing that nobody is connecting correctly. The engine is not the main problem. The Ford Red Bull power unit is actually competitive. What's destroying Verstappen's season is something far more embarrassing. Something that was hiding in plain sight since pre-season testing in Bahrain. And I'm going to show you exactly what it is. This is not a story about a team having a bad start to a new regulation cycle. Every team has bad starts. This is a story about a series of structural decisions made over the last 2 years that are now coming due all at once. And the bill is brutal. Apex E-Ray. Let's break it down. Let's start with the number that changes everything. Weighbridge photos captured at the Chinese Grand Prix show the RB22 clocking in at approximately 716.5 kilograms without the driver. Add the mandatory minimum driver weight of 82 kilograms, and the total package comes in at an estimated 798.5 kilograms. The minimum permitted weight for 2026 is 768 kilograms. Total motorsport. That's 30 kilograms over the limit. To put that in perspective, in Formula One, a widely accepted rule of thumb in the paddock is that every kilogram of added weight costs roughly 0.03 of a second per lap. The Judge 13, do that math. 30 kilograms. At a track like Suzuka, that's nearly a full second per lap, buried under pure ballast before Verstappen even touches the throttle. And it gets worse. Lando Norris's McLaren was estimated at 779.5 kilograms total. That means the Red Bull package is carrying approximately 19 kilograms more than one of their direct competitors. Total motorsport. This is not a performance gap you close with a setup change over the weekend. This is a fundamental engineering deficit that requires months of aggressive development to fix. Lighter components, redesigned substructures, carbon fiber work that takes time in the wind tunnel and time on the factory floor. Red Bull's technical director, Pierre Wash, acknowledged the problem directly, saying, "We're going to have to find weight on the car." Total motorsport. At least there's honesty. But honesty doesn't give Verstappen grip. Here is where the narrative gets more complicated and more interesting. The easy assumption is that Red Bull built a bad engine. They're a first-time power unit manufacturer partnering with Ford, diving into the most complex hybrid regulations in F1 history. Of course, the engine is weak, right? Wrong. Isaac Hadjar, Red Bull's second driver, was blunt about it. "We have a good power unit. The engine is good, everything," he said. "It's just the chassis side is terrible. Just slow in the corners." F1 natics. That quote hit the paddock like a grenade. A driver publicly calling his own team's chassis terrible is rare. It's the kind of statement that people in Milton Keynes don't forget quickly. But Hadjar wasn't wrong. The data from Racing Bulls in Australia backed this up. On a circuit where engine power counted for a great deal, the 2 Racing Bulls, running the same Ford power unit as the main team, set the second and third fastest sector times of the entire weekend in the high-speed section. F1. Oversteer the engine can push. The chassis is the anchor. The RB22 has serious balance issues that make the car surprisingly slow through all types of corners, and that consequently puts high stress on the tyres, degrading them faster than competitors. GP block. That's a double penalty. You're slow in the corner, and then your tyres are destroyed by the time you exit, which means your straight line pace suffers too, which means you can't even use whatever power the Ford engine actually has. Verstappen described it directly from the cockpit. There's no grip, and I would say that's the biggest problem. No balance, just losing massive amounts of time in the corners. And because of that, you start triggering other little problems. But the big problem is that the cornering is just completely out. GP Blog, a 4-time world champion, saying his car has no grip in 2026. This didn't happen overnight. This is the result of a series of choices that look defensible in the moment and catastrophic in hindsight. Several analysts have argued that Red Bull compromised its 2026 foundation by continuing to aggressively develop the 2025 car in order to chase McLaren in the title fight. In that reading, Red Bull essentially spent resources trying to save a championship race rather than committing fully to the new regulations, and is now paying the price with a weaker chassis package. F1 Natics, they nearly won the 2025 title, got within 2 points. That's the cruel irony here. The decision to keep pushing on the old car was defensible, and it almost worked, but it meant the engineering bandwidth needed for the 2026 chassis was compromised. You cannot fully split the attention of a technical department between two completely different cars with completely different regulations and expect elite output on both. Mercedes committed to 2026 early. Ferrari committed to 2026 early. Red Bull blinked. And then there's the deeper structural issue. Some analysts have suggested Red Bull GmbH may be learning that you cannot simply turn a Formula One team into a conventional corporate system and expect the same results. High-profile technical departures over the last 2 years, a corporate reorganization that some believe stripped away the essence of how a successful F1 team runs, and a possible overcommitment to last year's development race. The cumulative effect of all of it is now visible on track. F1 Natics Adrian Newey left. Key technical staff followed. The institutional knowledge that built 4 championship cars didn't vanish overnight, but it started walking out the door. And now the RB22 is the first Red Bull designed without that knowledge base intact. Reports now indicate that technical director Pierre Wache is under internal pressure, with staff divided over the direction taken in the RB22's development. His future at the team is described as growing murkier by the day. GP fans. When a technical director's job security starts making headlines 3 races into a season, that is not a team that has its internal structure under control. Let's talk about the driver. Verstappen has a contract exit clause. He can break out of his Red Bull deal at the end of 2026 if he is outside the top 2 in the drivers' standings at the summer break in August. F1. Oversteer right now. He is 9th in the championship with 12 points. Pierre Gasly has 15. That clause is not hypothetical. It is very likely to be available to him, and the paddock knows it. Reports have surfaced that people inside Red Bull are discussing scrapping the RB22 entirely and building a new package from scratch. The mood around Milton Keynes after Suzuka is described as deeply negative, with doubts that the current car can close the gap to Mercedes this season. F1 oversteer. Think about what that means. 3 races in. And there are people inside the team already talking about starting over. Team principal Laurent Mekies has attempted to project optimism publicly, insisting that conversations with Verstappen are focused on improving the car rather than on his potential exit. But the pressure is real, and it is not going away. GP fans, Verstappen is not someone who accepts mediocrity quietly. His radio calls have been a masterclass in barely contained frustration. And the dangerous thing for Red Bull is this: the 5-week break before Miami gives him 5 weeks to think. 5 weeks to look at the championship standings. 5 weeks to receive phone calls from teams who would pay anything to have him in their car. If the RB22 doesn't show meaningful improvement in Miami, that conversation gets very loud, very fast. There is a path out of this. It's narrow, but it exists. Red Bull's technical director acknowledged they are already working on lighter components to bring the RB22 closer to the target weight, and pointed to 2022 as a precedent. That year, the team also started overweight and corrected it mid-season before Verstappen went on to win the championship. Total Motorsport. That comparison is worth taking seriously. Red Bull has done this before. They know how to find weight. They know how to iterate fast. The factory in Milton Keynes is not suddenly staffed by amateurs, but 2022 is not 2026. The regulation complexity is incomparably higher. The excess weight in the RB22 appears to come from a combination of factors rather than a single problem: chassis and suspension components, power unit packaging, cooling systems, battery integration, and structural reinforcements, all contributing incrementally. The judge 13. There is no single bolt you unscrew to fix this. It requires a coordinated weight-saving program across multiple departments simultaneously, and the clock is not friendly. Miami is in May, then Canada, then Monaco. Every race that Verstappen starts from the midfield is a race where the exit clause gets more relevant. The window to fix this is not infinite. Here's the honest summary. Red Bull built a competitive engine on their first attempt as a power unit manufacturer. That is genuinely impressive and should not be overlooked. The Ford partnership delivered. The combustion side of the RB22 has real potential, but the chassis is overweight, unbalanced, and slow through corners. The institutional knowledge that built championship cars walked out the door over the last 2 years. The technical department is reportedly divided. The team principal is playing defense in the press, and the best driver on the planet is publicly questioning whether he wants to continue. That is not a team having a bad weekend. That is a team in a structural crisis at the worst possible moment, the opening of a brand new regulation era that will define the next 4 to 5 years of this sport. Mercedes figured out 2026. Ferrari is close. McLaren is coming. Red Bull is fighting physics, politics, and a clock that does not stop ticking. Miami is in 4 weeks. The 5-week break gives Red Bull time to work. It also gives Verstappen time to think. We'll find out in May which one of those had a bigger impact. Apex era. Subscribe, hit the bell, and share this with someone who wants to understand what is actually happening in Formula One, not just who won the race. See you in Miami.